everybody. It's good to see you. I hope everyone's had a happy holiday and welcome to 2022. So this was supposed to be a month that the Malleus basically holiday special was going to happen, and I figured since the game was postponed due to, you know, the panoramic, why not make a video? You know, you guys have been asking questions about Malleus and about my character Odette for well over like 2 years now, as I've been playing her since 2019. So I figure why not do a quick, sweet little video that briefly goes into Malleus. I'm not gonna be going into like crazy detail here, and I'm essentially going off of memory, but yes, so that is what we're going to be talking about today. As you can see, I am currently dressed as my character Odette. And Odette is a, 24, 25-year-old, like my age, bar maiden who was sold to the Markland army by her father in hopes for her to have a better life filled with adventure and possibly, a hot husband or something. I don't know. He just wanted better for her. And Odette, no choice, of course, because, she was sold, goes off with the soldiers, basically as their cook, as she was well renowned for, cooking. And being surrounded by so many rowdy men, she was able to handle herself because she was actually one of 8 children and had 7 brothers. That drove her absolutely nuts. And she was the youngest, so you can bet they teased her like crazy. So soldiers, she could handle it. Also, she had some very creative ways to get back at them if they pushed her buttons a little too much by putting a little bit of extra chocolate in their pies. But yes, this is Odette. Honestly, she's been a very fun peasant character for me to play. I'm gonna kind of go into more of her details about how I feel she functions narratively as I give you guys a little bit more background, but Odette is kind of like a goalless character. Like, I just want to exist as her. I don't want to climb the ranks of society and become a noble or, really actually marry off even. I just like all the drama of being this like worldly static character because I actually do work the in-game bar and like I do actually serve food in the game. So, I like having this character that people can just like come back to, who's always going to be at the tavern and is interactable and also can just be, like the token damsel in distress. It's a lot of fun. I love being Odette, but enough about her. Let's get into the game. So Malleus is a application-only LARP, and what that means is that you must apply. And now when you apply, you basically give a background of like how long you've been LARPing, who do you know that has like, played the game or would refer you, your character concept, and a mock-up of your character's costume, if not an actual photo of your costume. Now, this is because like Malleus, besides having like a high costume standard, also has some pretty dark themes in it, and they just want to make sure that everyone who's playing, we all have to play together, that we're all down with what is gonna go down in the LARP. So if you put in your application and you get accepted, then essentially there is a Discord that you get brought onto in which you make your introduction there, and depending on where each group is at might depend on where you're sorted, because the game must be balanced, because it is technically, it's like collaborative competitive, where we want to make a good narrative of the story, but we also want to win like the in-game trials to get prizes, or not prizes, but like get bonuses within the game. So you get sorted into whatever group that you put in for. So you get to like put out of like 1 to 6, I think, like who do you want in rank and this, that, and the other. So it's kind of good to apply with a concept that has like key characteristics, but maybe, you know, some of the influences can be open for interpretation with each culture, you know, and then once you know where you're gonna go, then like fine tune it. That would be my biggest recommendation if you're looking to apply. Like think of like a good concept slash archetype and then like think about how it could work in each faction depending on what you get accepted to. Which brings me to the next thing, the factions. So yes, there are 6 factions. Really, there's like 5 main factions and then like a 6th mini faction. And essentially the world is, if you're familiar with Warhammer Fantasy, or if you're familiar with Darkest Dungeon, anything like that, like that's kind of the vibe of Malleus, but also sprinkle in like Monty Python and, you know, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, you know? So it can be a very dark comedy as well, or it can be a little raunchy in certain ways, but there is no dubious themes, but there are, you know, chances where you may see a flying phallus in the air, a real flying phallus with wings going through the air, death from above. Yes, so like, that's the kind of thing you could encounter in Malleus to give you guys like a gauge of maturity rating. This game also, you know, it is a wet LARP, so there is actual booze allowed at the LARP. Of course, everybody is, you know, we must drink responsibly and not, you know, make an ass of yourself. But yes, there's booze allowed at the game, and so we are actually having this like really great, like grim, dark fantasy tavern world, and it's just, I personally, I love it. I really love this game. So with that in mind, the game also has like real world influence from like real world cultures, like, you know, taking elements from certain European cultures and, you know, reinterpreting that in the game world, kind of just like how Warhammer Fantasy did, basically the same thing. And so each group, you know, it's the Renaissance era, so essentially they represent, you know, a major part of European culture that would have been happening at the Renaissance era at the time. So number 1, the first group that we're gonna go into is Markland, the Empire, the Great Empire, the Archduchy of Markland. Yes, so that's where I'm from. I stan Markland, okay? This is a Markland stan account. All haters can, you know, see the door. Markland is the, you know, everyman's kingdom. We are the equivalent of like Prussia in the, you know, mid-Renaissance era, you know, big poofy sleeves. There is a specific, you know, German uniform. It's a Landskret, I think. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, and I'm really sorry. But yes, so, you know, like that big, poofy, dramatic, you know, Renaissance silhouette is, oh my gosh, it's all Markland, and it's all drenched in red and black and gold and white, which is, well, actually my costume. Gold buttons, red bodice, you know, black on my trim. I try and keep it very visually easily seen that I'm, you know, from Markland. Now, Markland's place in the Empire is that, you know, they're the all-controlling empire, and so they seek to be more powerful and annex all the territories around them within the Empire for their resources and whatnot. Now, the biggest element of the game that I haven't touched on yet is also Witchstone. So Witchstone is this, you know, magic stone that's falling from the sky that has all these, you know, corrupting and otherworldly properties, but can be used in many ways. So Markland is basically going gun-ho and trying to get as much Witchstone as possible to power the technology and, you know, better the Empire. And so, but we're like the everyman, you know? If you see a villager, if you guys are walking through town, they're probably a Marklander. It's really cool too because the culture has a lot of influence from, you know, like Prussian, Germanic, you know, romantic culture, Renaissance culture at the time, and it's just so fun to kind of like mash these things up. Like my character Odette is what would be the equivalent of the Alps in the country. And well, I actually got these are real wooden shoes that I actually wear. Like, hold on. These are messed up bottoms. I wear these, okay? Really great for your flat feet, by the way. I wanted to bring that milkmaid aesthetic, that, you know, German folk, you know, fairy tale aesthetic while still being grounded in reality. And that, I think that's what makes Markland so fun, is that it is a really wide empire. So you can kind of really either not pay attention to like where you're from and just be like really generic if that's easier for you, or you can pick one of the provinces and like really get into that. And I think that's just totally awesome. Markland also has the most advanced weapon technology. We are beefing up like with flintlock pistols and whatnot. We have cannons. We are a pretty advanced society as well, and we also want to use, you know, magic to, you know, enhance our society through the Mages Guild, or Mage College, really. And that's like the sixth group. That's really not a group, but we'll get there. This would lead me into the next group, which is the Temple Malleus. Now, Temple Malleus is technically aligned with Markland. Like, they're like the radical church subsect of Markland. And they are basically witch hunters and highly devoted priests and probably like physicians and scholars and stuff like that. But they're all supposed to be very, very pious. And now Markland and the Empire believe there is one god, and his name is Solcon, and he is the god of light and justice and glory. So, you know, everyone's worshiping Solcon. Again, Stan Solcon. This is a Solcon Stan account. So all these people are essentially religious zealots that are expert monster killers. And it's really awesome, and they're super fun to play with. I'll post some pictures, obviously, as I'm talking with like people from, you know, within the game and whatnot. But yeah, the witch hunter aesthetic is like, oh, they look so good. They are beautiful. All of them, every single one of them. Now, the temple is all about, you know, keeping order within the Drakenwald. And now the Drakenwald is where Malleus actually takes place. And the Drakenwald is a territory like far off to the west, and like nobody wants to go there. It's awful, and it's, you know, it's deadly. It has all these monsters everywhere, and it's only getting worse because of the Witchstone. Nobody really wants to go there. And the people that each kingdom and empire sends to go to the Drakenwald, they're not there because they want to be, all right? They did something wrong to be there. So Temple are they're the only ones that I've kind of like elected to go to also, you know, keep peace, prevent heresy, kill monsters, you know, spread the word of Solcon, and of course, gather that Witchstone. Just because Temple is technically supposed to be with Markland doesn't mean they align with Markland all the time. Not speaking from experience or anything, you know. The next group is going to be the Lioness. So Lioness is the equivalent to Bretonia in Warhammer, and essentially for non-Warhammer fans, France, aesthetic aristocracy of like medieval France, and then like English governing. Smash it together, and that's Lioness. And so they worship a different god, goddess actually, named the Lady. And the Lioness is all about like upholding that chivalric code. Serfdom is still in place. It's just still in the medieval era, even though we're technically already in the Renaissance era of this world. So they are behind in the times, and they have like knights and, you know, flowy long medieval dresses, and believe, you know, the lady and healing spring waters and blah, blah, blah. It's all heresy, of course. But Lioness is a territory that the Empire would greatly like to annex, but they're kind of not having it, but their technology is not up to snuff. So they're afraid of the Empire encroaching upon them and them not being able to defend themselves, and so they hunt for Witchstone, in which they have to send people to the Drakenwald. And of course, you know, nobody wants to go to the Drakenwald. They get sent to the Drakenwald. The next group is going to be Freeport. Now, Freeport is technically part of the Empire already. They are part of Markland, but because they are so rich, they have so much money and mercantile power, that the Empire is kind of like, okay, we'll listen to your demands about how you want to govern yourselves. You know, just give us what we want and we'll let you do you. So it is essentially like its own little state, but not really. And of course, Freeport being a merchant state, well, they have pirates. I mean, privateers. Those are legal pirates. Privateering is definitely a big thing in Freeport. Also, just like general being like a merchant, a lot of merchant characters can come from there, or a lot of like artisans and special types of like, you know, alchemists and whatnot. And of course, it is a den of debauchery. So all sorts of sin happens down there. I love Freeport because I wanna have like a alt character that's a pirate, but like she's a terrible, terrible pirate. I love Freeport. I love to hang out with the pirates in game. They're cool, they're awesome, they always have like incredible costuming, and their whole area is always decked out and feels very piratey. The next group is Wolfland. So Wolfland is essentially like the fantasy Russia of, you know, of the group. And they are a backwards society that worship many gods, and they have practicing witches that deserve to be burned at the stake. But yes, considered to all the other regions, Wolfland is quite in the past. It's a lot of Russian influence from, you know, the Renaissance era. The Empire is encroaching from the south, coming to Wolfland, and they want nothing to do with the Empire. So of course, they also are seeking Witchstone to beef up their magic and, you know, protect their country and fight against the encroaching Empire, just like Lioness. Is Markland the good guys? I don't know. That is depending on what side you're on. And the last group is the Mages College. So essentially, this is the hardest group to get into. Like if you were to apply, the likelihood of you being a mage is like very, very, very low. Being a mage is hard because technically, see, in the world of Malleus, witches get burned at the stake because magic is blasphemous heresy, okay? But let's say that magic could be used for, you know, the betterment of Solcon's word and, you know, for the government. Well, then, you know, they're mages. The mages essentially, you know, people with magical abilities, they either get, you know, they get sent there or, you know, they elect to go and they train to learn and, you know, become best at whatever their magical ability is. Like Markland actually has a single fire mage named Teresa. She is super great. She'll heal you in like 2 seconds, but then, you know, it hurts because she's cauterizing your wound with her hands. It's very painful. But yes, so there are different like mages that can do different things, different abilities, you know, like a water mage, you can have, you know, an astrology mage. Like there's all sorts of things that you can be, but of course this is something that has to be approved by staff. This is not an easy group to get into, but they basically go through, you know, courses for many years, learning all about magic that they can and specializing whatever they specialize in. And then they get sent off to other groups and, you know, act as like a magical political advisor that can also do magic things. Think of like The Witcher and the magic college in The Witcher that basically does the same thing and they train everybody. Same idea. And so of course, the mages kind of act as like reporters to the college, and they also like tread on really thin ice with the temple, because if a if a mage were to say anything blasphemous, they could be considered a heretic and then deemed a witch instead. And we've already had a burning at the stake. It's already happened. So like, just be careful, all right, mages, because the temple's they're just sniffing around. So now that you guys know a little bit about the factions, we will talk about the world. The Drakenwald is technically sort of part of the Empire, where it's basically like desolate waste where chaos has overtaken, and there's rising cultists and monsters popping up everywhere. When I mean monsters, I mean everything from beastmen to vampires to flying phalluses in the air to terrible, witches trying to kill you and spirits trying to eat you. It's a lot. It's a lot. You don't want to be there, okay? In the Drakenwald, there are multiple places and like little towns and sanctuaries within the Drakenwald that one can go into. And that's kind of how the game works, because we go to multiple campsites throughout the year, and changing the campsite is kind of like, oh, okay, we've moved to another sanctuary, which brings me to like the tavern over here. Like the tavern is movable, right? And I have this cute little sign that says that I am in fact the tavern keep, but each like town is a sanctuary where all of the factions come, and basically nobody can kill each other there. It is kind of a no man's land, and like all guns should be down. That doesn't mean that people haven't fought or gotten shot or poisoned, but you're technically not supposed to fight because you'd be breaking laws in each country, essentially. We don't want an international incident, okay? So there's all sorts of terrible strongholds as well for the villains of the game. Now, we have actually been to a vampire's castle, which was Lord Radachek's castle, who was the pervading lord of the land. Like, he had a little village attached to it. There were people there, but there were also people being, brutally eaten alive because, vampires. And we can't really have ghouls and, vampire armies. It's not really great. So we gotta stop that from happening. And it's great that Malleus kind of has this structure where it can kind of change its location, because even though it's sort of like, oh, this is the monster of the week, it keeps it really fresh. And even though that's like very traditional of like an American boffer LARP to have that kind of structure, it's really fun because we come back. We come back to these villains and we see them again, and we have to interact with them, and time has passed, and like, they tried to shoot a cannon at Radachek after meeting him the second time, It's really cool because it allows these narratives to keep building when we go back to each location or encounter each villain. And villains in the game are not really like NPCs in the traditional American boffer sense, in which they are non-playable characters, just people like on a NPC shift for 4 hours being a monster for you. It's more like you can be a villainous character and it has its own like setup and rules and things with it, and it's like almost like an alternate character that you can play to kind of antagonize players for the weekend. And it's really cool, and it's such a unique system because I actually feel like you build these narratives and these character connections with these villains. So the world of Malleus is incredibly dangerous. Now, there is lights in the dark. It's kind of cool because technically there's proof that, the gods exist because people can invoke them through magic and spells and stuff, which is really, really, really neat because people who are devout really have like a lot to go off of, which I don't always feel is like a thing when there are like religions in LARP. And of course, we have to be respectful about real world parallels, and we would never like co-adopt any rituals from like a real religion or anything like that. But it is so fun to be able to get into the in-game theology and really think about what it means in the scope of the world, because it actually works. So there is like the shrine that the temple has, and the shrine can also be upgraded. It can cure corruption. They can bring people back from the dead at the shrine. And, you know, as long as prayers are made to Solcon, you can also cure yourself of, you know, corruption if you're devout, or, you know, there's just so many options of play, frankly. To talk about Witchstone for a second, it glows green, which is why I have it in my background, but Witchstone is basically the thing that everybody wants. It is the resource that everybody wants to gather, but what's really cool is that Witchstone can be made into other things. It can be made into like drugs and potions. It can be used to forge, you know, special weapons. It can be used to bring somebody back from the dead. You know, there are special gunpowder, you name it. There are so many ways that Witchstone can be played upon in the game, and so while players are heavily incentivized to bring Witchstone back, like, because you can find it like laying around in the town, or if you go out to plunder the depths, which is essentially you go out into the forest outside of the sanctuary and, you know, go to the encounter area and see what the heck is gonna go down. You know, you want to get that Witchstone for your, you know, king and country. And the more Witchstone you get, the more favor you get, which is a mechanic that the game has introduced, in which essentially we ship everything back off to the Emperor. Emperor's like, wow, they did a good job, let's give them some resources. And therefore you can do things even better next game, or maybe resist you know, fear a little bit more. And it allows for a really interesting narrative-focused competitive play. The Witchstone mechanic, too, is like, you can't even touch this stuff without becoming corrupted and immediately needing, you know, to seek assistance. And if you carry more than one Witchstone, the more Witchstone you carry, the more corrupted in the mind and the body you become. Like, you actually, like, get mutated and look gross. And if you don't, like, catch it soon enough, you will remain that way forever. And what's fun about the game, too, is that you don't necessarily have to interact with the Witchstone game, like, that hard. Like, I think Odette has probably touched Witchstone, like, twice in the almost, like, 8 or 9 games that I've played her. And if you're not playing with it, you still get to feel the influence of it around you. And that is something that I love. Or the chilling fear of seeing, like, that green glow anywhere at any time is just so fun to play on. And I think it's a really great integrated mechanic, frankly. Now, as you can collect Witchstone, you can also collect resources. So there is herb, wood, and ore, and they're on these like wooden tokens, and they have like a little picture on them. That way, like, it's a wooden token so that it's biodegradable, just in case if they lose them in the forest or something. But you pick these up, you can like go out and forage for them, or if you plunder the depths and come back successful with some, you know, some treasure, I guess, you can also get herbs, ore, and wood that way. And so they basically allow you to craft things, repair weapons, you know, for carpenters to upgrade the buildings, to, you know, build cannons, repair armor, etc., etc. You know, apothecary folks and doctors can use herbs for, you know, cleaning and making medicine and yada yada. Because as a peasant, basically because there is actually, like, you pick whether you're gonna be a commoner, a gentry, or whatnot. Because I'm actually a commoner, I have a really cool skill in which, like, somebody could be like, oh, this is the wrong thing. Instead of ore, I needed wood. I could be like, oh, I know a guy that might have some of that, and I take the token, and basically my skill, my power is that I can go exchange that token for the one that they needed. But I can only do it, like, once or twice per day. This game is also super high immersion. Like, it feels like you're in it. I really have enjoyed every step of the way with Malleus, because honestly, I have been part of this game since the playtest. And a playtest is basically a beta test, like a video game beta test. A playtest is a beta test. And there's like a small select group of people who are asked, you know, they're invited to come, and they go and give feedback. And they go again and give feedback, and go again and give feedback. And this is like something that can take as little as 3 tries to as many as 10, even 20. So most major LARPs, like even blockbusters, have definitely probably been through at least a rough playtest or a full playtest before they really come onto the mainstream. Like, Dameron was playtested and Malleus was playtested. Like, we had about seven playtests in total, and we changed the game as it went along. It was super fascinating to see the game grow and change, and like, it's really, I think that's why it's like really near and dear to my heart, is because like I've been here since the beginning, and it's been so fun, like seeing the world get fleshed out, and like seeing everybody get more involved and more into it, more people be here and be involved, and it's just been so awesome, and the community is so cool, and the Discord is incredible because, you know, once you're in your group, we have our own private, like, little channels that we can, like, talk and plan things on, and we can share things in the groups. It's just a great community, and everybody has a really good spirit. Like, there has been some absolutely hilarious moments at Malleus. There have been really tragic and horrific moments, disturbing, you know, and it's just the right balance of all of it, in my opinion. Like, it's so much fun. So this leads me into my next segment, which is actually going to be just talking about some of Odette's relationships and the story thus far with her, and like, I've had so many fun interactions as Odette as well. Like, it's just, you know, my faction, like Markland, and seeing Markland grow over time and get so many more players in it, it's been so fun watching this game grow, and like, I have really, really enjoyed, like, introducing new people to the game. Like, my friend Jericho just joined us, and he plays his character Simeon, and he's a really, really spooky-looking doctor that always wears a mask, and no one's seen his face. And he's kind of terrifying. And, you know, of course, my best friend Emmeline playing her character Thomason, which is basically Ratcatcher. And she is a Ratcatcher in the game, of course, because we can't let plague get out, you know. Odette basically interacts with everybody in the game, though, like, because everybody comes in and out of the tavern, so, you know, she's interacted with the witch hunters, who once gave her a gun that she shot a beastman at, basically point blank, and actually killed it, but then immediately got the gun, you know, confiscated, but it do be like that sometimes. I think that's what's so fun for me about being a tavern keep and like a barmaid, is that you really do get to like talk to everybody, and it's so fun just being a stupid commoner. And like, you may see these props around like this and these. Those are all like throwable pots and pans and buckets and rolling pins that I bring to the game, because all of my stuff is like tavern. It's all tavern themed. I can't actually wield a weapon as a commoner, but I can use an improvised. And so I basically bought a ton of props that would look like random tavern things that other people can pick up and fight with too. I think Odette as well, like her journey and her narrative, you know, it's been more like character driven and like developing her, you know, personality more as I played her, really like nailing down who I wanted her to be during the playtests, and then bringing that to life in the main game. Like, she's actually surprisingly devout, and I never usually play on religions in games. I'm personally an atheist, and like, it just never really interests me, but I don't know, Malleus is the first game to like actually interest me in that, and I think it's really cool how they have integrated these fantasy religions, and I love playing somebody that's devout, like taking time to pray and whatnot. And of course, you know, Odette is quite the virtuous maiden, and I don't think people have really thought about how virtuous she truly is. And she's also not necessarily gotten more book smart. Like, she still hasn't really been taught to read yet. Like, she can read a little bit, like she can't really like read a bunch of paragraphs, but she can maybe read like a sentence or so badly. But she's gotten smarter about how she deals with people and different factions, and maybe like the fact that she wants to save money and be able to buy things like a nice dress or whatever. And technically her keeping the money that she makes at the tavern is illegal, but I mean, what would 1 silver or gold hurt the Empire? Okay, it's fine. Psh, it's fine. Odette's father sent her out with the goal of her getting married and having, you know, a family, having a better life. But unfortunately, she hasn't had much luck with finding a husband. She was betrothed to a guy named Garlic Carl, but immediately 30 seconds after the Reeve betrothed Odette to him, without her around, he got shanked by a couple of bandits and died, and they dragged his body into the lake. So, you know, I didn't, you know, she didn't even know the guy, this, that, and the other. He did come back as a zombie later, and actually fell by my side and whacked me with garlic because he thought I was dead. It was really sad. Rest in peace, Garlic Carl. But yeah, not much luck on that front. But like, there have been these like slow burning developing relationships with like actually more than one of the road wardens, and you know, some of them the soldiers in Markland, and you know, the fool Grimaldi from Markland, and like some folks from Lioness and like Freeport. It's been really, really fun to kind of like see those seeds be planted and like watching, you know, things start to grow from that. I have been really interested in to see how all that's gonna pan out. I think we're gonna wrap this up with the Q&A section. So I had actually asked on all my social media platforms if you guys had any questions for Odette or about Malleus, and you guys sent in some great responses. I also posted if anybody in the Discord wanted to ask any questions, whether it be in-game or out of game, and let's get into it. All right, so the first question is from Salvador Davy on Instagram. Why is Odette scared of rats? Asking for a friend. Well, Odette is scared of rats because rats spread plague and disease and also eat all of the food. Rats are vermin that need to stay out of the kitchen. Duh. Another question from my friend Nate. What does Odette do to let loose and have fun in this setting? Odette drinks a lot of booze. She drinks a lot of booze to let loose, and she likes to dance. She likes to drink booze and dance by the fire and eat some sausage and ham. That's what my girl loves to do. Okay, a couple of questions from Discord. So, who does Odette have a rivalry with? Faction or character? So Odette definitely has a rivalry with Isidore and Thomason. I would think that is like really the only two that pop into my head, and like a antagonistic relationship with the Reeve, but like they're I wouldn't say that like they're rivals, but Isidore and Odette are definitely rivals. Another question is, how does Odette feel about her own faction? Who's her go-to in bad situations and stuff like that? So, you know, Odette is actually very, very loyal to Markland. She's done some, like, underhanded things when, you know, the gentry has pissed her off, but she's very much devoted to, you know, the country, and she wants them to succeed. So, you know, she's very pious, very devoted, even though she gets frustrated sometimes with the system that she's in. Like, she just wishes some things could be better in the Empire. And, you know, when she's having a bad day, I actually think she runs probably to her friend Grimaldi in Markland. Now, Grimaldi is Markland's fool, but he's actually pretty smart, and he knows how to smoke a damn good ham. And Grimaldi has kind of like been one of the only characters to like reach out to Odette and like listen to her and like sit with her and keep her company while she peels potatoes and like and cooks, because like I'm actually cooking at these games, and it's really nice when somebody, you know, comes and keeps me company or helps out. So Grimaldi has kind of like always been there in those quiet moments for Odette, as well as like Rasmus the Road Warden. He's also been there for Odette in her quiet moments. I actually think she's probably developing feelings for both of them and some other folks as well, due to the fact that, like, you know, Odette being a commoner, her whole life is labor. So like when people give her labor, like when they help her with the cooking or when they, you know, help her go get wood, she finds that really, really endearing. And she finds that like, wow, like this is somebody who's willing to help me. Like maybe I can trust them and get closer to them. Like it opens the door for her. Next question. What in the Drakenwald does Odette fear most? I would say she probably fears most, I think death. I think anybody in the Drakenwald would be, you know, scared of dying, but I think specifically she's probably scared of beastmen and vampires the most because they were the first creatures that she saw at Drakenwald and like, you know, traumatized her deeply. So I would definitely go with beastmen and vampires. So these are two separate questions, but I'm gonna kind of tie them together. What is Odette's favorite thing to cook and her favorite treat? So Odette's favorite thing to cook is kind of her favorite treat because, you know, she never really grew up with a lot of meat. Most commoners don't, and most commoners have never tasted sugar either. So combine the two. So I tend to roast a ham at every Malleus, and that is like Odette's favorite thing. You know, this juicy, tender pork that is covered in honey and brown sugar. It is, you know, it shows status because it is meat and then wealth because of the sugar, and it represents like that better life that her father desperately wanted her to have, you know. So I would say sweet, delicious roast ham. How did Odette feel in the aftermath of the tavern fire? So last game, the tavern was set on fire. She was knocked out from behind and somebody set the tavern on fire, and unfortunately the tavern went from a beautiful level 3 to level 0, which very bad, and we had to fix it like ASAP, as soon as possible to at least get it back to level 1. Odette was really angry because like she was the only one in the tavern because the town, the sanctuary, was under siege from these like demonic creatures, and so the tavern burning down was kind of in the midst of that, and nobody came into the tavern to help her, so she warded off these demons by herself with this bucket. I threw buckets, I threw pots, I threw rolling pins at them, and I had this board, this masher thing, I'll post it here, that I was like poking at the demons to get away from me, and I just ran and ran and ran. She was pissed, man. She was like, why was nobody at the tavern? Like, we need the tavern. Nobody helped me. I think that was probably the first time she felt like abandoned by the town after she had done so much for them, you know? And I think we're gonna close on this very last question, which is, how long has it been since Odette's imperially recommended health checkup? I don't think Odette has ever gotten an imperial health checkup. I don't even think Odette really knows what a checkup is, what that means. She probably hasn't even seen like a doctor before, like Simeon, you know? That girl probably legitimately needs a checkup. All right, guys, so this was kind of my crash course about Malleus. I didn't go into everything like super deep, like creating a character for Malleus or the lore or anything like that, but I definitely can if you guys are interested in that in the future. You know, I can make multiple videos going into multiple aspects of the game. If you're interested in that, let me know down below. And also, if you have a question for me or Odette, leave it down below. Everything about Malleus will be in the description box down below. It'll lead you to the website where you can find the rule book, when the next game is, when applications will be open. You can also follow Malleus LARP on Facebook. And yeah, so I think this has been a wonderful semi-holiday episode. And take it easy, guys, and happy LARPing.